Okay. Welcome back to another episode of Out of the Blank. I'm here with Anthony. It's nice to have you back again. Short hair, living in Florida. Big changes have happened.
Yes, sir. Yeah, thank you for having me back on. Always a pleasure to see you, Robbie.
I'm wondering, what is your definition of philosophy or philosophical?
Hmm. Hmm. Well, there's a lot of different ways you could probably slice that pie, I feel like, but in the long run, I guess it's just having the an inquisitive mindset towards um a word that comes to me. It's not exclusive to all philosophy, but it describes a lot of the philosophical mindset would be like ontological,
Mhm.
like the root origin of where things as we know them come from. um um
Does the
in
word
the in
seem like it fits what it's supposed to do? Because when I hear that word, for some reason, it just seems very pretentious to me. Where I'm like, I think it's a
Yeah,
little bit deeper than that on some terms, but like, I don't consider like, see, because the idea of philosophy is like kind of like these life understandings or these deeper meanings to things, and kind of like when you start to look into metaphysics, for instance, it's questioning a lot more. It's looking deeper into kind of like unwritten rules or unwritten understandings, kind of like life's journeys in a way that's kind of unspoken. And I feel like that's just basic stuff that people should be learning anyway. Like when someone says, I have a master's degree in philosophy, I'm like, what the? You have a master's degree on life? I'm pretty sure I know a couple naked hippies that have that same master's degree in life. But
right.
that's the word that goes into your head. And it's kind of like when someone says a master's degree in philosophy, it's not really like academia sense considered a giant standard compared to when you get like another degree, a master's in science or a master's in this. But I'm like, I think it teaches something important, which is like where my idea of class lessons on life need to be taught in schools, and not life like paying your bills, but more of a life of showing the beauty that's in it, to where you can truly understand and kind of soak in the beauty that it has. Because a lot of the times in the world, you neglect those basic features and functions. I mean, if I would told you what's better to be successful or what's better to be healthy, is it just eating right? Is it just working out? Or is it being all right mentally? Because that seems to be the biggest like hindrance in a lot of people's lives, is being okay mentally.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would completely agree with everything you just said. As like one side of the coin in philosophy. And then on the other side, I would also say that there is, on top of just like ways to live your life, because that is a huge quintessential part of it. But they're also in the, um, you can maybe call the, I was going to say the outer limits, but honestly, it's kind of the bread and butter, at least initially, as philosophies branched out further. But you have the really technical stuff that, like to this day, will still will cause any diligent reader to read it two or three times. Like Kant always comes to mind. Nietzsche. It's been a while since I've brushed up on my old school philosophers, but there was a time. These days I've been a lot down the Fortean rabbit holes with neuroscience and things. But there was a time that studying the like, I'd get the different paperbacks with a bunch of different philosophers' essays and stuff like that, and yeah, a lot of like, I guess there's like three camps, generally speaking. Um, there's sometimes it just seems pretentious and like it's basic, kind of almost common sense, and they're just like over philosophizing. And then sometimes it seems like, I don't know. There might just be two, but in any case, the last one at the very least, they're getting on like some extremely technical levels that have to do with things like perception and the difference between quantity and quality, which seems like a basic idea, but the more you stretch that out, the more you start to grasp at straws for control methods. Like, what is quality in the long run? It really is a whole rabbit hole.
I didn't mean to hit you with a deep topic first thing right in the morning. But I started to look at it more because I think recently I've kind of understood, and I've always kind of known you can't know everything in the world. But then when I started to hear, especially looking back at so many episodes that I've had, that the perspectives that you can really get, where it's like, it's kind of like when you read an article and you're trying to find an answer, and it might be a clickbait article for an opinion that you like or opinion that you want, or maybe something you might find factual. It's hard to see the truth in it though, because then they end up like saying some words where you're like, are you just saying it's a what? Like, you're still questioning it afterwards. And I think
Hmm.
with hearing so many perspectives, I started to understand that I'm never going to be able to understand even a sliver of information compared to what's out there in the world. And I think that either leaves you striving for more or it makes you go fucking mad. And I think I'm falling in the second category of making it go mad, because talking with UFO people, then talking with Egyptologists, and kind of diving down the psychedelic rabbit hole with a couple of friends, I'm starting to understand more now that like everyone has this reality that's built into their head, and then their perception is all in basis of that reality. And I think the reality, or what is conclusive to the truth, even me shoving large words in a fucking sentence, it makes it sound good, but what does it mean? I'm over here
Right.
like ripping my hair out, like going Kramer through my hair, like what the fuck? Because I have no clue where this idea of life, okay, life is what you make it. Okay, then someone else says life is just being happy. Okay, life is about money. Okay, life is about bitches. Okay, you're all not wrong. You all have your own definitions, and I'm looking at it a little bit more deeper between what is the definition to you of certain terms, to be able to understand the process of how your brain thinks of things that might end up being something that my brain finds appealing, that I could end up attaching to. You understand what I'm saying? Like flow of
Yeah.
information type thing. Okay.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And stuff that I think about all the time, I feel like, especially like why are people gravitated towards certain things as opposed to others? Um, because there is a certain amount of free will. We've talked about that a little bit, I believe. And but I will say that it's like an ebb and flow of like your ability to utilize your free will through the waves of determinism coming at you and environmental influence and genetics and all these other things. But um, yeah, it's like the stuff you're talking about, trying to categorize and all these things. I can highly relate, and um, the Eastern philosophies, speaking of philosophies, have always like spoken the most to me in mindsets like that. Just it always reminds me of the. I'm sure they have like a term for it, and I should probably go find the term, but I don't know. But it's a Buddhist mindset that the more you like acquiesce and categorize something, which is the basic foundation of knowledge, you have to do that in order to, it's like a fact right there, creating a fact mentally in your brain. But whenever you do that, you're automatically like systemically like uprooting something or tearing it from the whole. And you're taking a piece of the jigsaw out so that you can like scrutinize it more. So even though you're getting like a closer look at a piece, it's important to know that when you get like a fact or a piece of knowledge or whatever, um you are in a way maiming it a little bit. It's not going to be completely, it's always going to be incomplete in some way. And some people take, it's not like knowledge is or truth is subjective, but more so like truth has a lot to do with vantage point, you might say. And
But wouldn't the truth be only the reality that we all agree upon? Like we all believe that the truth is that killing is wrong. But that's our reality, for instance. In some cultures, it might be a little bit different, because I'm starting to notice, like, evolutionary wise, our bodies are not affected by our growth through life, basically. Unless you get hit by a fucking car, then you're probably going to evolve a little bit differently than the rest. But
right.
when you look at our consciousness, a thought can change our evolution of consciousness. A movement can change an evolution of our consciousness. idea or something can change that evolution of consciousness, but an idea is not going to fuck with our physical bodies. Our I guess communications or conversations would not mess with our physical forms. These are all basis in genetics, or these are all basis on developmental growth, based on family, or based on however whatever your bloodline is or your genetic code matches up for. But that's the weirdest thing when you really start looking into it, is that our a thought wouldn't change us, our biology. It's a different form, which is when we start to get into the thought and the full, like I'm trying to basically tackle the philosophy thing, which is like the philosophy can evolve. Your philosophy, your code of life, your code of conduct, whatever can evolve. Your behavior can evolve, but your physical form is not affected by the things that you discover and the things that you research and dive into, which I don't know if and maybe I'm taking too much acid, but that's a fucking deep one right there, man.
Yeah, yeah. And I will say that you're right that there is like a general separation between. I mean, they're different categories, obviously, mind and body. But that being said, there are those thresholds where they intersect, and kind of like feed into feedback loop, I guess you could say. And epigenetics definitely has um well, I can't remember who the scientist was there, but it's been a minute since I looked into it. But epigenetics is really fascinating because it has to do with the genetic expression, which can be changed by essentially things like your diet and habits and other environmental influences. But it's um, it's kind of like a light bright board. Like you already have the light bright board there, but through so you're not going to change your genetic template at all, but you can definitely potentially at least modify that light bright picture coming out. And there's a lot of interesting science about that, but there's a middle path, like with everything, because some people can new age it up a little bit, and it is a science. It's not full blown magic, but I mean, yeah, there's something to be said for using, I don't know, trying to catalyze certain certain ways of living, I guess, whether that be mental or physical or a little bit of each. I guess what I'm trying to say is like there is, when you do one, you will find a little bit of a ripple effect in the other, but it's not always completely straightforward. But it's interesting stuff.
I start to look a little bit more deeper, because I mean, what do you believe? I guess the creation of who we are, or our evolutionary species. What do you think that evolved from? Like, where do you think? Do you think we came from chimps? Do you think we came from space? Do you think we came from? I don't know.
It's a good
That's
question.
yeah.
um, I'm pretty open to it. I don't I don't have because I know we came from somewhere,
Hmm.
you can't get around that. I think that the panspermia coming from space is pretty fascinating. I think it seems like, I guess, gun to my head or like a big bet in Vegas, I'd probably say it seems like the vast majority of things at some point came from somewhere else and just kind of started to intermingle on Earth in a lot of ways. And um, whether that be us or not, that definitely is the case with a lot of different things on Earth. I feel like, and it probably has something to do with us. I mean, if not, I don't really see any. I don't have any qualms with us coming, like from this like traditional evolutionary model. But I don't know. I think that there's probably, like, I don't discredit the traditional, like us evolving from primates, but I do get the opinion, or like just the gut feeling, not as a an evolutionary scientist, but I think it's a little more complicated than that, if anything. It seems like a lot of far reaching theoretical science like that, even though we have a lot of data to back it up to show that that's the right direction. I think that there's probably a little more to it. I don't think we ever, we're always talking about like trying to acquiesce knowledge and then uh, getting an incomplete picture. I feel like that's probably the case with evolution as well.
Well, there's like kind of two realms of thought. Is there's the people that don't really want the change or don't really want to agree with a certain thing and want to hold on to something, which kind of holds back the change. And then there's kind of the change that's inevitably happening. Just I think it might be slowing our rate of growth as a species. I mean, just recently they found that from what we thought is that people were like I guess around the ice age was when like kind of the thing kind of started when we see this growth in people, but they're actually finding it actually we're actually older than found the human species remains older than what we thought they were, which by 23,000 years before the ice age. So I'm starting to look at it like I know there's people that resist believing that there was anything before the creation of Jesus Christ. Like the as soon as Jesus was born, our
Mm-hmm.
whole clock reset. You start seeing the years say AD afterwards instead of BC. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, there was a point in on Earth when it was hit by an asteroid, and there was only a few thousand people left that had to repopulate from there. So I'm looking at it like, do you think that this idea of reaching another class civilization, which is civilization two, which will be inhabiting another planet like the moon or like Mars, like we're seeing these space adventures kind of happen. The first civilian space rocket test mission that went up, and then eventually we'll be able to colonize on our planet. Do you think we're going to get to that point, or do you think it's going to be another reset and this is just another timeline that we've eventually? This is probably the farthest timeline that's ever been made. Because I'm starting to look at like maybe the creation of man. This isn't the first time. This has been the first playthrough. Maybe there's been multiple playthroughs, but every single one has failed long before this area that we're in now. And this has just been the longest extension. Maybe that can explain aliens, but I don't know. I've heard so many stories with aliens now where I start contemplating this stuff of maybe the idea of maybe they're not passive. Maybe these abductee stories where people say, I didn't feel like I was in danger, but maybe they were abducting you and that's being taken against your will. Is that not wrong? Or maybe in this reality that we have, it is wrong, right or wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff there. Um,
I'm doing too many drugs.
that's good, man. You got to dive deep sometimes.
Hashtag
Now,
dive
but
manual.
yeah, hell yeah, man. If you have it, go check out Dive Manual. And okay, so the uh, the idea of abductions quickly made me remember that the day of recording this, September 24th, this is
Damn it.
Jacques
Don't say the
Vallée's
date.
82nd birthday. I
Okay.
know, but I have to mention Jacques Vallée's birthday.
Gonna mess up the editing process. No, I'm kidding.
You can edit it out, it's fine. Um, um, but what were you saying before that? Because aliens, that's gonna grab my point of focus. You were talking about the phases of the human species. You're right. I think that um, you know there's a lot of different good ideas out there, and no one has the right idea. So where my brain kind of tends to gravitate is, I think that we've been doing a lot of playthroughs. I think that we've gotten close-ish in different ways, in different points. I don't think we've made it this far with shuttles and things, but I think that at the very least, humans have had an extremely comprehensive, or at least a surprisingly comprehensive, mapping of the galaxy and different things. You know, um, even though it was called astrology at the time, their astronomy was pretty damn sophisticated. So, but anyway, so I'm not sure, because to me, the question is not like, so you could say, will we survive long enough to make it into space? And that's one question. But the more interesting one to me is, how long could we really survive in space? Because it seems that they talk about space madness, and obviously that's not a thing with disciplined astronauts, but they also don't stay out there forever. And also, so let's just like go on like a Star Wars kind of mental thought experiment, and like regular people out in space, I don't think our psyches could handle it, because again, like, disciplined astronauts won't get space madness, but I don't think for a second that normal people wouldn't. I think that we would all, I feel like I would start to lose my mind out
Oh,
there, even on a ship. Yeah.
well,
And then not to
maybe
mention your body starts to deteriorate slowly. And like, I'm not sure if we have the proper technology to account for that kind of stuff. I don't know what could
I've
survive in space.
I've thought about this before, and I had a astrophysics friend or an astronomer friend say this to me. He said, "Well, your cells would adapt." And it's kind of like all these scientists or all these people that go up into these rockets and go up into outer space for the first time. Your cells are now completely different. It's kind of like when you smoke your first cigarette. You can never take back that you smoked a cigarette. You can never take back that you went into space. Your body has changed. Your body has changed since you smoked your first cigarette. You might not ever smoke cigarettes again, but your cells now know what that is. That's new information that's been leaked into them that was not there before. It's the same thing with space. It's not really the question of would we be able to handle it. It's about the generation that's born into space to where all they know is space. They wouldn't have any missing of Earth. It's kind of like when you see all these people that are like flying around on these spaceship shows and they're all living in space for so long because some of them have never really even been to Earth. That's why a lot of these shows talk about
It's
like
true.
Earth. That's where we first started, but then we haven't been back there in thousands of years because it's just been destroyed or whatever because of the concept of these people don't know what that life is like. They don't know what oxygen is unless it's the oxygen that's on their ship. They don't know what trees look like. They see pictures of Earth and they're able to imagine it, but it's kind of like how that myth of I don't even know if it's a myth, but I guess Al Gore was the one that popularized it. Was polar bears? They're all dying. They're all on fire because of global warming. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure there's like a large amount of fucking polar bears out there. But I think it's just an evolutional stage. You know, if we reach another class civilization, that's just an evolutional stage. You know, it could end there and it could end on Earth too. So civilization one and two. But the weird part about civilization one is that if we get out of it, Civilization 2, as long as that keeps going, we're never going to have to worry about resetting the progress of Civilization 1. So building up from huts again. Our technology would already be advanced. We already know how to make a bunch of things that Civilization 2 will be already off on a good jumping point to get their civilization going. But it's kind of like for the longest time, we thought sharks needed a partner, like a male and a female, to make more sharks. Well, the first shark ever recorded that's, I guess, mastered Parthenogenesis, which is a Greek term for reproducing, a female shark in an all female shark tank had her first baby, and no one understands how. They think it just genetically modified itself or adapted or evolved or whatever to be able to reproduce without needing a male host, which a lot of these
Mhm.
species have the ability to. Not sharks, but other types of animals are able to do. And I'm looking at it like, what's our next evolutionary stage? Is there going to be an expansive thought where we don't really need our bodies anymore? I mean, people don't really use them a whole lot anyway. So I start to look at like, would we adapt to the fact that maybe the less and less we use it, the less we have a need for the organs that we use? You know, our appendix used to be used. Now, maybe what happens if we evolve past that to where we won't need our heart anymore? Maybe we won't need these certain key organs that we thought so essential now. I mean, back in the day, you lived to be 20s, mid 20s, late 20s, early
Yeah.
30s, and you're dead. Now we're living to our 90s. What's the next stage? What generation's going to look back on us and be like, they only got to live to be 90? What fucking losers. And they're living to be 900. You know what I mean?
hmm Yeah.
I'm packing some heat on this episode.
Yeah, I'm sure you've heard of this theory by now, but like it kind of ties into the ultra terrestrial theory, the idea that
Jesus.
humans have made their way off of the planet and started to adapt and physically and mentally, and they have basically just become grays.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not saying that that is something I completely subscribe to, but it is fun to think about. I think it's a little too comic bookish to be literally true, but I definitely like the idea. But because you're right, it would. The big question is how would where would the bell curve be in the future generations adapting to their environment in space? And yeah, I mean, in all fairness, I'm sure it wouldn't wipe out everybody, and it might not really wipe out anybody in the grand scheme. But I do remain skeptical about the fact because it seems like, especially the more you get into esoteric ideas, um, whether you call it like comparative religion or occultism or the mystery traditions or whatever, but like they all have a lot of focus on, they called it different things, but it was always a focus on the human consciousness's relationship to the Earth's electromagnetic field, because that is the proxy between the Earth's electromagnetic field is the proxy between the human and the known, like the galaxy and thus the known cosmos. And that's where you got into astrology and even astrotheology. And even though the people use these in like kind of fairly silly new age terms today, these are very old school, ancient modalities and like ways of living life and things. So um I
Well, it's a lot like
yeah, I don't
game
know.
theory, for instance. Game theory
Yeah.
is like the strongest to survive type thing, that only the strong will survive. You have to learn to adapt and evolve, or you're going to end up being left behind. Your species is going to die out. That's the game theory. There's also younger dryas theory that a lot of people subscribe to, which a lot of people in science communities don't really appreciate being out there. What's the real, isn't a theory just a realm of thought? Isn't this whole thing that we're living in technically a theory? I mean, the idea that we're able to breathe and function and move, now that's a thing that we all know is a construct and that's right in front of us and that is happening. But isn't that just a theory as well, too? Aren't all theories valid in an age of thought? I mean, if we're technically in one of our revolutionary times of man, for instance, even though I would consider a revolutionary time of man back when we were creating like big shit. Right now, we're just creating another fucking iPhone that looks exactly like the iPhone before, and they just add another number onto it saying, oh, it's 13. What's the difference between 11 and 12? It's got a better camera. Who gives a fuck? I still can't take a picture of the moon. Um, but back when we're building ships and making voyages, all the racial stuff aside, when you look at the dawn of creation, the Renaissance period, the Golden Age, all these types of, major vast growths in humanity, and now we're in one of these periods right now where we're going into space and we're making functional trips up there. So I'm looking at it like, would the expansive or adaptation start to turn into that you have to learn to live on a planet that is not the one you originally knew?
Yep. I'm
And if we're
um
infused with stardust, where our fucking thoughts change?
right, right. What is the name of Oh, I
Jesus.
wasn't prepared to talk about this, so it's probably not going to come to me. But the Kardashev scale, the type 1 civilization, type 2, and type 3. You've heard of that?
Yeah.
Yeah, where you harvest the energy of the star. That's where you're starting to make my brain go. And I'm not sure. I find it fascinating, but I'm not sure if we will ever be able to make it to that point. I'm a bit of a cynic sometimes, not because I want things to fail, but because statistics, it's really, yeah, I mean, all these things are friggin' possible as far as I'm concerned. It's really just a matter of I mean, if human beings are able to set aside some of the other, or a clean house, so to speak.
Mhm.
But um
Well, what's your
and
definition of clean house? We have to clarify on, because cleaning house could be just going door to door and rounding up all the people that don't agree with what society agrees with and shooting them in the fucking street. So I don't
that's
want
right.
that to happen, but I would like a more of a congregation of thought. I think the whole point of having these people, and maybe it's the fact of like a lot of these people that have these different flows of thoughts are supposed to be meant in separate societies, or maybe there's just a type of influence that changes your drastic opinion. Maybe one day we'll get to a place where Earth is filled with these people that think this way, and then Mars is the same species, but they've now learned to adapt and evolve differently. I mean, let's take it into this the skeptic scale. How about that, where we speculate on what the next 100 years or 50 years is going to be? What do you think the creation or this idea of evolution is going to end up leading to in, let's say, a couple more generations, 5 generations? What do you think we're going to be at?
Ugh. Man, I don't the flap of a butterfly wing could change everything. Like in 5 generations, we could all be speaking Russian now. I don't know.
I hope we're in fucking space at that point, like living up there. That'd be cool.
Yeah. See, it would be great, and like I said, it's definitely possible. But I remain such a cynic about um just like the human scale at large. And to answer your question about cleaning house, I think like such a huge amount of it boils down to being okay with other people's differing opinions, because that's gone out the window. Like, not only are we not okay with other people's opinions, um, everyone has gotten on this like weird bandwagon of like proselytizing about their ideas and getting into camps like more than ever, like tribalism to the upteenth degree now. And everyone is just there's no debate anymore. It's dog eat dog. And I mean, that's for sure going to be the death of us. Like, that is, I'm not trying to be an alarmist or anything. We're just shooting the shit here. But that truly, people are always talking about your guns getting taken and stuff. Sure, those are parts of the slippery slope. But the real downfall of your very culture is when you can't even agree to disagree. And I mean that very sincerely. So I don't really have um and there's every possibility that things will change, but like at the moment, at least in America, as someone that really has taken like a huge, um, has really tried like with emphasis to not go into any specific camps, like political camps and things. Um, I'm kind of disgusted at like how willing people are to draw the line, and I mean, it's not a good sign for the culture. So like if we can't even do stuff like this, then we're never going to make it into space.
Well, the age of thought or the age of open conversation has kind of went out the window in some degrees. If they don't fit your group or fit your idea of what your reality is, then you could just cut them out of your life, or you could just. There's family members that won't talk to family members anymore, only on a concept of they disagree politically. I mean, this is
Yeah.
kind of where the downgrade of mental thought kind of comes in when you start having. I guess it's a protection aspect. Like for instance, like when every country talks about America is just so entertaining to watch. It's like, what are we talking about? Like every country has their issues. You're only deflecting from your own to base it all onto America so you can get your mind off of it. There's these issues that every country, every person deals with mentally, but we can't even agree on those. We choose to deflect those and we choose to focus in on things that we can get mad at people about. It's not about showing weakness, which is an idea of what's weak. Isn't I thought weak was just not being strong, but weak is now never backing down from your opinion because you think you're right. That, in my opinion, weak is just thinking that you're right 100% of the time. I don't think anybody has the answer to anything. I think all ideas, and I'm starting to understand this more with the UFO community, is that there's a lot of people hesitant on talking to people about their experiences or talking about their thoughts on things. And the idea that they're going to be locked up in an insane asylum, which 50 years ago might have been a possibility. But, I think it's the factor of coming across someone that might be truly open minded or just coming across someone. And I don't think I'm 100% open minded. I think there's some things that I just won't change my opinion on, but I'm willing to understand a person's perspective to be able to do so. And I think that only comes from talking with so many people. I think that only comes from maybe a psychedelic experience that people talk about. I think there's big changes that we're missing out on. And I think they're crucial steps in an evolutionary process. Maybe the answer to fucking jeopardy, the jeopardy of life, is just everyone understanding that we can't fight. We might as well just talk about these things. And then there's like a fucking doorway that opens up from the heavens, and this mystical Dr. Manhattan being comes down and goes, "You fucking figured it out. Took you whatever 50,000 years, but you finally got it. That there, you guys are all wrong. It's all this one giant conglomeration of thoughts, and you build up and morph these things into the realities that you create and you eventually live in. But you all can't even do that. You're all more than willing to tear down other people's realities to basis and save your own. It's like being on your own fucking island. If you ask somebody, would you just prefer to have your own island that nobody else lives on? They would love it for a week. Then they'll be fucking tired and upset that they can't
Hmm.
talk to their friends or use social media or fucking take a picture of their dick and send it to somebody. That's what happens.
Yeah. There's the whole Dr. Manhattan and like culture being just this like forward moving amalgamation of things. That was a good point. Because I mean that's the individual life too. It's not like there's some specific people ask, like, well, I wonder what the meaning of life is. Like, I don't know why you would pick that question above all the others, because there's a lot of interesting philosophical questions out there, and the meaning of life is pretty obvious that it varies from person to person. Like, like that's, I don't know. It's a pretty boilerplate philosophical question. Not that you brought it up, like you actually, you hit on some eloquent points there. And there was some things I was gonna say. You brought up so much, but I like it. You're on a roll, man.
I just woke up from a nap, so I'm thinking deep right now.
That's great. Um, but yeah, we'll see. I don't understand where all it seemed like we were at least on the beginning, we were at least at the beginnings of kind of thinking outside the box of tribalism, at least in some fronts. And it seems like we've really taken a huge backslide, particularly in the West, because that's where most of my experience is and that's where I live. But I could see that for sure. And yeah, it's definitely, I don't understand what people think is going to happen with this like ideal of some sort of monoculture, like you're saying, like living off on an island. Like, what happens when everyone does agree with each other? I don't want to live there. I don't I don't understand who does. That sounds
Sadly,
boring.
I think it's the diminishing aspect of what our values are. Our values, when someone chooses, and this is how a lot of people view things, is when someone doesn't agree with you, it means they're discerning your value. And then you take that into account as they're discerning who you are as a person and basically calling you stupid. Like, even when I'm
Mhm.
been called a conspiracy person about the fucking lab, that is now being the main idea that it did come from a lab, which I'm like,
Mhm.
no shit, but I'm not gloating in people's fucking face about it. I'm not even, I don't, good. Glad I'm right. Let's fucking go to the next thing. There's no fucking point in sitting there and running with your fucking trophy about shit. It doesn't make any sense. I don't even consider it a trophy. I consider it
Yeah.
okay. Well, I had a thought and then it turned out to be right. Any period you look through life, I guarantee you that if you pinpoint any mass creator or mass person that changed a civilization or did some amazing innovations, there was a person beside them that they could bounce ideas off of where it's like, that's a good idea, but maybe we should work on it a little bit more and fine tune it and then throw it back out there. And the next thing you know, you got these amazing creations that are invented. You have to bounce ideas off of other people. You can't solo every fucking thing in the universe. And that's what everyone wants to do because they're too afraid that what they have might be valuable and they can't share it or they can't let somebody fine tune it or mess with it because then it fucks with their value. And now you're saying that, okay, now I didn't even create this anymore. And I don't think that's the term anymore. I think the whole point of expression, the whole point of conversation is being able to enhance your own perspective by understanding somebody else's. But maybe I might be fucking nuts.
Yeah, bingo bango, man. That's
I'm
it. The
nuts.
nail
Oh.
on the head. No, both. We're both nuts. But no, there's some good stuff here. And to be honest, not that I haven't been, but like to be perfectly candid, I will I tend to, if not trust, I tend to be more comfortable with someone who gives me an opinion and then follows it up immediately with what the fuck do I know, as opposed to someone who is just constantly like proselytizing, just like trying to win me over, like just come to church,
Yeah.
just believe in this conspiracy theory, please, and um or believe in this government clearly blatant propaganda, please, and just go away, stop proselytizing to me.
Hey, don't
I
bring
don't
the
know what.
lab into this.
No, 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 nothing like that, but um uh the point, to that end, like, people like with, what I'm saying, like proselytizing of being just like in your face about it and not being willing to admit that there are other viewpoints, is that really is the like the dictator cult leader mindset. I've done a lot more research into cult leaders, more so than like extensively deep dives on like political leaders, because I mean, everyone knows about Stalin and Mao and Hitler, and we know what types of psychopaths they were. But I mean, like cult leaders specifically interesting because this weird microcosmic thing. I talk about it a little bit in my upcoming book, Hunt Manual. But it talks about a lot of different stuff in that. The main tie-in all being like the shadow complex and like the dark unexplainable and stuff. But cult leaders,
Or you're
they
talking to
might give
someone
these.
who's talked to Scientologists and every single cult, like ex Jehovah's Witness and all those things too. So you look at Scientology, they base everything off the government. Like a lot of their stuff is old government style techniques of manipulation. It's nothing fucking new, but it's creepy how they look at and they make like they'll Mike Rinder's daughter, ex Scientologist, tried to send me her profile and have like, see, you don't even know the true story. You're being manipulated by a master convincer, like considering that Mike Render, the person that was jumped by Scientologists and been rigged through the mud and was on him and Leah Remini have a podcast together. And they fucking
Mhm.
talk about all that horrible shit that Scientology does, but it's about brainwashing because these people get to a point where it's like if me and you join Scientology, we could hang out with Tom fucking Cruise. There'd be people that we wouldn't ever think in our everyday lives you could ever hang out with. But Scientology opens up that doorway because now you're all under the same branch of Scientology. Nobody is higher level than anybody unless you're in the actual levels. They have like sector C, whatever the fuck it is, and it's different categories. But it's these manipulational tactics of making you more of a we, but in one horrible hive mindset.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and these cult leaders, they never it's like a spell they have to maintain, truly, because they can't ever admit that they're wrong. Because you might say that that could, if a cult leader just would do that a little more often, they might be able to like use it in their manipulation tactics. And maybe on small levels, but if we're talking about the long term spell that like a cult leader, or again even like a dictator for that matter, has to maintain, um to keep like the masses on their side, you really can't admit that you're wrong, and because you like,
Well, who wants to be
especially with
wrong?
what.
Who wants to be wrong when feeling right is so goddamn good?
Right, right. And then it's of course the slippery slope. If you're willing to, um on a human level, admitting that you're wrong might make you more relatable and vulnerable on a genuine level to your peers. But if you're in a position of leadership, like a cult leader, then that is a slippery slope to open up people to question you, and that's the end of the illusion right there. So the logic follows, like someone is simply as willing to just say, well, at the end of their spiel, like, what the fuck do I know, and be genuine about it, is probably a bit more of a safer bet than the person that is completely adamant. Like, I never fully trust the person that is completely adamant. You could be like really impassioned and you could feel convinced. I'm not saying don't feel convinced, but you got to keep that small shadow of a doubt to maintain any credibility. Really, people forget that, I think.
Do you think that the fact that power do you think power is more corrupting or do you think the shadow of a doubt is more consuming?
Um, I think, well, those are like both extremes on the opposite sides of the coin, and they're both can be pretty rough. But I think that you're better off dealing with the shadow of a doubt. Where my brain is at personally, uh, in term that, well, not personally, somewhat like my mindset with things lately is, I think, I wonder, I could be wrong about this, but I wonder if at a certain point, I'm not on like a communist or even socialist level, but like if I'm talking like billions, like Bezos level, like at least as example, like your brain has got to change at that level, right? You're still a human being biologically, but you are like a weird different subsection of human, because you start to truly, with that kind of money, you reach a threshold where it doesn't matter like what kind of morals and ethics you were raised with. Your brain is going to change because you have so much, you have everything, it's limitless at your fingertips, you're a material god. And I really really truly doubt whether or not any type of human being can maintain like a semblance of what we know as just you and me, average Joe, relatable human being. I really don't think so. And I think it like warps you and messes with your head. And I, yeah, I'm not sure if anyone can be like quote unquote good with that kind of money. And so I think that leadership might be, it kind of goes back to Plato's premise in, or one of his premises in the Republic, like those that do not want to rule are the most fit. And I think that that is like a strange and unfortunate but true paradox about the world as we know it. So I think it's probably best to have the shadow of a doubt, because once you get used to it, it can be very useful. And
You,
and I think leadership just there's something to be said for leadership when you get put in the position and you roll with it. Like circumstance, people are relying on you, and then you're the leader for however long that situation plays out, and then when you're done, like that natural leadership, that's what it's about. But when you start looking at it in terms of just the dominance game, it starts to be very little benefit for the people around you, it seems.
what do you think's scarier about trying to understand a perspective or maybe change your perception on things? Do you think it's the fact that it's like coming to grips with the mortality of the thought that you have, or do you think it's coming to the grips of the fact that it might change?
Hmm. I guess both,
Because all
because
thoughts die, right? Every thought dies. You're not thinking the same exact. You might think along the same basis, but usually, if you're growing properly, your thoughts will eventually change. But you're also confronting the mortality that the thought that you have right now, the thought that we have right now, a year from now is going to change, which in terms is going to die. But is it scarier that our thoughts are going to change, or is it just something we don't know? So we're unwilling or unentertained by trying to discover something new because what we've built up in our head, this thought, is now so powerful that it seems like the absolute truth, where a year from now we could be looking back like we knew nothing.
Yeah, I think people really define a lot of their personality on their thoughts, quote unquote, the basic boilerplate stuff, like what do I think about this and what do I think about that, and etc. And um sure, those are accumulative aspects of your personality, but that really isn't what defines you, or it shouldn't be, because those are so like illusory and transitory, like you're talking about. And there are much deeper mainstays in the human condition that you would be more accurate with defining yourself with. But yeah, I think that's a real issue that people have, is um assuming that, like, I don't fully know how people get here, because personally, for all my pitfalls, and I've got plenty, but I've always been, um I guess, because in some way I've always been a storyteller, so I've always been open to other people's viewpoints, even if I didn't believe them. I was always interested in hearing what they had to say, because if nothing else, it might be entertaining, and then you, even if it was just entertainment, you'd always like have some sort of takeaway. And yeah, I don't know. People again, I don't know what people want with this monoculture type stuff. It's not going to be good if they get it, that's for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm tossing some heat, but I think I'm running out of steam at this point. Ba-
Yo, well, is it cool if I take a pee break real quick?
Yeah,
I'm sorry about your ed.
back to the grindstone. I got my thought now. Do you think that maybe possibly that all this mishap or confusion is the fact that we're still confused of what our origins are from?
Yes. Yeah. People have like an intrinsic need. I guess it's an adaptation to, view their existence as like a storybook. So people are always looking for maybe not necessarily the whole answer, but context at the beginning and end. And when they don't have that, I think it drives them crazy, very literally and sometimes. But I think that in the same way that we just can't have a monoculture and we can't all agree, like by definition, it's like one of the rules of existence. I think that we also will not ever have the context for the beginning and end. And if you're worried about agreeing with everyone or having those contexts, it all boils down to context, really. If you're worried about not having the context, then you've already lost. Like you've been screwing up hard for a while, and it's not to say that it's all useless, because we're always learning and adapting, but like it really goes down to the Buddhist middle path. Like you got to understand that uh trying to trying to understand everything is not the point. That's not the point. That's the whole story of Faust summoning the devil so that he had limitless power. It was he wanted that kind of limitless power because robbed he felt existentially robbed by his pursuit of knowledge and the sciences, because for all his knowledge, it gave him no context. It just gave him more bricks to stack. And so in the end, he wanted to catch up. And so he summoned a devil and nearly went to hell. So there's something to be said for that. People say that like you can't be a good person, quote unquote, without religion. That's like a trope. And I don't think that that is true, but I think it's definitely something to be said for the fact that people have oftentimes a much better go of it dealing with the uncertain when they're spiritual.
It's interesting how people always want to know the ending, but then they never want to get there. You know what I mean? Because the ending is essentially death. But if we're all dying slowly every single day, how come we don't realize it? How come we don't feel it? But we feel the pain of the mental exhaustion that we deal on a daily basis, depending on how difficult our day is. We feel the changes in the air. We feel the changes in things that we choose to focus in on. And we've just neglected the fact that we are slowly dying. What about the perceptual change that can just make a person not freak out about bills that are they're worried about 24/7, or maybe the fact of when their next job or whenever their life is going to finally take off, that seems to dread on them every single day to where they have this existential crisis. And this isn't the first time this has ever happened with people. This has always been a thing, but I feel like this is the one time where we have the puzzle pieces, but we don't know what fucking picture it is. And I think that's kind of the important part about that, because if you really look at that of what I just said, is that we have the puzzle pieces, but we don't know the bigger fucking picture. That seems scary to a lot of people, but maybe it's a fact of you can turn it in a way where now you can form the picture into whatever you want it to be because you have the pieces to do so. See how that quote just randomly popped into my head? Next thing you know, I can change it from this pessimistic thing to now sound optimistic. It's the subtle words that we use. I mean, if Spotify can put up a article about the words that you should use to help attract more listeners, because you might be, by saying me or I, you're technically saying that it's just about you and not saying we, which is a random way to get, I guess, trending, is by saying more we words. Um, but if they can put an article up like that, then where's the fucking blueprint to the basic model of what life's characteristics should be, or maybe the societal flow that we are all enduring at the same exact time? Your life might be different than mine. 100% our experiences might be different, but we've all grown up in kind of the same environment around us that is the basic template to how a lot of people live. You need a job, right? You get a job. You need a job to pay bills, right? So you can have your own shit, right? Everyone has that. Everyone agrees upon that. Then why is everything so uniquely, individually different? And why is it a concept that we still have to tear down other people's realities to fit our own?
Yeah, I don't know. I
Thank
really
you.
don't
That's all I
know. It's
wanted, is an I don't know.
yeah, it's really it's in a way that's why I like some of the unexplainable stuff, the Fortean and etc. Because we don't have we're never gonna have like the full answers to them. So it, in a way, the pressure is almost off. I think it is really useful, and like, it's a different tangent, but the whole existentialist point of view, um it doesn't, it's like the revolution of the self before anything else. That's kind of what I believe in. And um but with things like all these political sentiments, it gets so divisive. I mean, there's a lot of weight on it. Obviously, I understand that things need to be talked about, but yeah, again, it's like, people, we need to talk about them. People, they have this um real sanitized view of the world that they want. And yeah, it baffles me, and it's made me, for all like the cynicism I have, I've definitely been a little shocked lately. um because I expect people to be divisive and divided, but I didn't expect people to be at each other's throats so much with the recent politics. Like, people really are at each other's throats, and it there's going to be a lot of people um, with their tail between their legs before long. People are going to be coming down and realizing that um, they sacrificed a lot, like friends and family, maybe even a job, for a political ideology that, one way or the other, there's extremes on both sides that are going to suffer just as much, of the polarizing issues at large, not just one. But yeah, I don't envy the people that, 6 months, a year from now, when they're down from this fever dream of zealotry and proselytization about government propaganda or conspiracies. They're going to be like, oh, I don't know what I was doing. I don't know why I was such an ass to everybody I knew, and thought that, like, it's like a weird messiah complex that everyone's on. Everyone's on their own personal messiah complex. And like, look, I'm not perfect. I can be a shithead in many ways, but one thing that I am not is always like asserting myself over other people. I do podcasting and I write, but just again, it's like, it's part of the reason that I am interested so much in like philosophy and psychology and the unexplainable, is because um like, none of us have the full picture, so we're all kind of trying to go in a direction and like find control methods to create a more concrete perspective on things, because it's still not fleshed out. But everyone in the political realm, everyone is right, and everyone else is wrong,
It's because
and
sports went
everyone's,
away. Sports went
yeah,
away, and then after that year lull where there was no sports, people had to invest their time into something, and they hooked onto fucking politics. Now politics has fucking consumed everything. There used to be a couple of people that you knew of that were fucking political people all the way, where they would just rant in random
right,
places about it. Now that's become everyone, but I think it's because the narrative has switched from growing of a society to more of a problematic society, because I think it's all a factor of the media, and everything that we see 24/7 is now playing every single side, to where they're twisting around the narratives where you can't even find out what the fucking thing is anymore. I mean, when you look at CNN and Fox, they're necessarily running the same exact thing, just in different narratives at the same exact
yeah,
times they change over. It's always this random shit. And I think this is an idea of, it's great for business, but it's terrible for human growth. And when it comes to the personal
right.
accountability that people really don't hold themselves liable for, I think these businesses should understand that even though you're making more money with the amount of views and the attention that you get, you're not giving an established thought. You're twisting a narrative and a perception that's messing with people's realities, which in turn might be good for money now, but it's going to fuck up generations of the future. And that's really what we need to look for. I mean, if we don't stand up today, then future generations are going to be born into a society that's already enslaved in a way.
Yeah, I really hadn't thought about the sports angle yet, but you're totally right, man. Because I mean, the whole rah 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 of politics and the rah 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 of sports, they go hand in hand, and one is definitely helping people compensate for the other. Even though sports are back now, I think that some of that forward motion probably can't be undone. Some people will peter out, but there's we've opened up the we've the genie's out of the bottle a little bit, and
Well, you
Yeah,
opened up the
people really
door
are.
for people to dive into a topic that has just fucked with their lives for almost 2 years now. I mean, this whole political thing has fucked up and threw a monkey wrench into everybody's system or routines or this display of life that has been taken away from them, where they want to discover and look closely more now, which is actually a good thing that they're more caring about the lives that they're in. But now it's become so divisive where there's sides. There's a vax and an unvax side. It's a weird fucking world when I say that someone has died and they go, like when Norm Macdonald died, holy shit. You know how many people, it said life threatening illness Norm Macdonald has passed away from. You know how many people were like, COVID? COVID? Was he vaxxed? Was he unvaxxed? I'm like, what do you give a fuck?
Wow.
Someone's dead.
Yeah. Yeah. Good Lord. Yeah, that's sick. That's mental illness right there in the form of neurosis. Um, and
Well,
yeah,
people
rest in
just
peace,
want to
Norm
know
Macdonald.
if the blueprint they've taken is necessarily the right one. If they've taken the vaccine blueprint or if they've taken the
Right.
unvaxxed route. Is it their side that's suffering? Is it their side that's on the news today getting shit? Or is it the one are they the one that are above the other one where they can rub it in another person's face? It's all about teams.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, things usually always tend to level out a little bit, but um, I'll say this, COVID and the social vacuum that created is definitely what like threw the match onto the gasoline. But I guess with that metaphor, the thing that spilled the gasoline initially and maybe gave random users said matches would be the whole Epstein thing. I was thinking about this the other day, and like mixed with Pizzagate, which was obviously something. It's like some weird language in the emails, but clearly not the extent that everyone took it to. That the conspiracy theorists took it to. But I mean, Epstein is a different story. But one snowballed into the other with like zealotry a little bit and like stream of thought and so my point being once the lid was really blown on Epstein and he probably didn't kill himself in prison and the whole 9 yards and people had to like the average like soccer mom and
It ran for
everyone
3
else.
days in the news. The Epstein
Mm,
thing is the one thing I talk about was why did it only run for 3 days in the news that no one's getting to the bottom to is because nobody wants to talk about a person that had dirt on all of them. Everybody wanted him
right.
fucking dead. Every media source, every single person wanted him dead because he had dirt on the main people that are running those things. Might not have had dirt on the anchors, but this guy had Chris Tucker flying on flights. This guy had Bill Clinton flying on flights. This guy had Bill Gates flying on flights. This guy was attached to a bunch of different people where it's like Scientology, where me and you can meet Tom Cruise. It's the same thing for anybody that gets to hang out with Epstein. There's a possibility you get to hang out with fucking Megan Fox, maybe. You know,
Hmm.
it's weird how we don't look into that a little bit more and we're not seeing the government corruption. For how long has just money been going into these politicians' hands and nobody questions it of why it went missing? Why did Bellagio get $850 million to a mental health fund to help with mental health in his town or his state, and then he just lost it? What do you fucking mean you lost it? Why is nobody raising hell about the fact that there's
uh,
$850 million that's now gone?
hmm
11.3
yeah,
trillion given to the Pentagon that they don't have fucking receipts for. I don't know where it went. What do you
right.
mean you don't know where the fuck it went? Where's all this money coming from? Why is my grocery bill $10 more than it used to be because of inflation? Why is that? We have to print more money. Well, stop telling the fucking politicians to lose all my fucking money.
Hmm. Yeah, totally, man. See, and I love talking about space, but yeah, it's a cherry on top of the first part of the conversation. Like when it comes to the brass tacks, this is the stuff I think about when I'm like, all right, well, how are we gonna get there? Well, how are we gonna do all this? And man, I can't see us getting our mental bandwidth as a collective together enough for at least a little while longer. That's
I'm
for
not
sure.
trying to keep. I always end up diving into the politics shit on an episode, but I'm not trying to. But god damn it, it's like somebody's fucking with my life, and I don't even have the wherewithal to be able to fucking stop it. I don't know what I can possibly
That's how I
do.
feel. Yeah.
But I feel
Yeah.
like if I acknowledge that it's happening, I understand that a lot of things are not in my control in some aspects. If I'm going to be picked up one day and thrown into a fucking van, it's probably going to happen. There's no way I can stop that. Your guns aren't going to be able to stop stop that. But the gun thing gives people safety. That gun thing
Hmm.
gives people a idea that they can protect themselves and protect their family if an intruder comes. And the idea that people say, well, you don't really need a gun because the statistics and all that doesn't matter. Do you understand? It's like when you were a child and your dad gave you a flashlight or your whoever parent gave you some type of thing, told you it was a protection from the monsters. You felt fucking safe. And that's kind of what
Hmm.
this thing is. The QAnon shit. Good goal of trying to stop pedophiles from hurting kids, but
Right.
it was LARPing. It was people
Yeah.
like creating pedophiles and attacking people that weren't necessarily pedophiles and all this whole fucking ghost hunt that people entertained. It's manipulation where I just feel like it just needs to come back to critical thinking. I don't know what that definition
Yes.
of critical thinking is. I'm not saying I've mastered it or understood it, but I always like to ask the question of why. And it seems like more than ever, people are running with the narrative than asking the question why.
Yeah. Yeah. People, they find something that sounds interesting. Like, to be honest, I don't think that, I think sometimes people have a hard time distinguishing what's like, oh, well, that's a unique idea. That's interesting, between like, that must be true, because they both draw you in immediately. They're both like powerful and kind of punchy. And if you're not really trying to distinguish between the two, or you're just, because let's be honest, like, there's this is definitely not any sort of judgment, but like, this is just basic facts. There's a lot of job types that aren't specialized in research and, like, research type things. So it doesn't mean that you're not smart or you're not a critical thinker, but
Well,
there's a certain skill set to researching, actually.
how many bot accounts are just on there saying trust the science, get the shot, and they're wearing it's just a person in a fucking lab coat. There was that giant trend or that giant article that was republished over and over and over again of the lady doing a COVID vaccine commercial and she was laughing. They had the blooper reel for it, where it was like she didn't even
Wow.
necessarily believe what she was saying. MSNBC, CNN, these news sources that are distorting perception and realities. All the media fucking does is distort your perception and reality. They took Joe Rogan's original video saying of how he had COVID, he had to cancel his shows, but he listed his treatment that he used. And MSNBC, CNN took his face, took his original video, and added a filter effect to look like he had jaundice in the video to say he's actually
Oh,
sicker than,
wow.
and he talks about it. That's where he threatened CNN about suing them as a joke. Now Howard Stern teamed up with CNN and told Joe Rogan and every person that's unvaxxed that they don't deserve a hospital bed and they should die of fucking COVID. What are we talking about here? Where have we gotten
Yeah,
to the
this is
point?
insane.
Oh, here I go. Where have we gotten to the point in society where every single person on social media has become a goddamn detective looking for a fucking influencer? Everyone.
I know, right?
They don't know that person. They don't give a shit. They don't have the degrees or the width or the knowledge to be able to discover crime scene forensic, but everyone's seen a goddamn CSI show where they feel like they can just solve the fucking murder. And it doesn't make sense where all you're hearing is speculation. Maybe she's over here. Maybe she's over here. I heard this. I heard this. I heard that. I heard this from a friend who knew this friend who fucked Bill Clinton, who fucked Joe Biden, who fucked all the. Who gives a fuck? What? Where's your evidence? I don't. It's all speculation. Don't speculate about the death or the missing case of a person because now you're throwing a monkey wrench and now the reality or the perception of people being able to find this person. There's a good
Mhm.
thing you can do when it comes to this scenario. Retweet, share. Do whatever. That's the most you can possibly do to help people, but people don't want that. People just want to be able to solve it for themselves and get all the credit for it. It's very fucking strange how we're in a society that bases things off of social media more than ever now. It's a weird time when world star hip hop is now looked to as an actual news source. It's because now
Oh, tell me about it.
you've exploited these giant media companies saying that all these Fox News, all these things are just trash and garbage. They're not news anymore. They're entertainment. Where now you've gone to the sites that were initially entertainment like TikTok, and now you're looking at them as fucking news sources where I can see a person dress up in a goddamn scrub outfit that you can get for $1 at a fucking thrift store and then start saying, oh, well, here's this, and then you can get this, and you'll kill your cancer. Bull fucking shit. Don't suck the
Mhm.
dick of social media. It just fucking gets me, man. That's why I've been trying to stay off of it. Sorry, I had to rant. That fucking had a lot on my mind.
No, no, it's good stuff, man. This has been this is continuing to be a fun conversation. And yeah, I've always found that, granted, this is tongue in cheek because I have to use social media to do my networking and everything else. But
I do it for the
before,
podcast.
right before I came out with the dive manual, I was really on it limit. I just had a Facebook, and it was limited, and so I mean, it's just part of the hustle to a certain degree. But even when you use it begrudgingly, you can feel the programming try to like milk your dopamine and stuff. Like even when it's little tricks, it's like, well, don't you want some of that dopamine from looking at those notifications and seeing validation? And it's, but Black Mirrors, man, Black Mirrors with black magic. Like keep that shit on the DL.
Well, it's
Don't
like
let it
walking
get
on
too deep into your
ice.
brain.
Eventually,
Yeah.
the ice is going to crack, and you're going to be consumed by the black evil or the darkness of the deep waters below. The frigid cold temperatures, which is the social media rush of nobody giving a fuck about who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, you know, P it's pretty funny to see people um get on the bandwagon saying that cable news and these things and newspapers are a bunch of contrived bullshit, but and then go into things like Facebook and Twitter for the truth. It's you're definitely still getting programmed, and I'm
It's
not sure
all
how it's any
bullshit.
better. Yeah, and
My uncle, who tweets about all this government politic and Biden shit, is not the fucking master of the universe. But in his
mm-mm,
reality, he's bringing good things to the table. And you used to be at a Thanksgiving dinner when you would see them once every year, or maybe twice if they enjoy Christmas or they celebrate Christmas. You would see your crazy uncle rant about the political elites. But then
right.
somehow a weird shift in society happened where those goddamn people that were ranting about the political elites that we thought were just crazy got some shit right. And now they're like valid sources of information sometimes where you're like, how the fuck did you find? We're in a weird time where, remember Alex Jones? That man's gotten a lot of fucking things right to where you can't really kind of poke a stone at him. And a lot of people say it's because he's thrown so much shit to the wall, something's bound to stick. Sure. But what about all the things that he's called right where we thought, hey, that might be crazy? Now people don't know what the fuck to believe in.
Yeah, I mean, right, agreeing to disagree, and understanding that people are imperfect. Like Alex Jones really ruined his long-term um reputation with the whole Sandy Hook debacle, but I will be the first one to admit that he has gotten a lot right throughout the years. I don't know what the ratios would be. Some people might argue he's gotten more wrong than right. I really don't know, but I can at least say that he's gotten plenty right. Like I've seen enough. So, yeah, I think there's gray areas in life. People are uncomfortable with the gray areas, but sometimes that's all there is,
Well, he
you
said
know?
two and a half years ago on a podcast episode that China owns Hollywood. And then not even 4 or 5 months ago, we saw John Cena apologize in perfect Mandarin for the to the people in China for recognizing Hong Kong or Taiwan as a country where you start to realize, oh shit, China does own Hollywood. All the movies that do get produced. Now you see John Cena in more things than ever because he made a public apology to the people of China and he did it in their fucking language, which really bolstered in their credit. You start to understand is that there's a lot of things out there where it's not about shutting down the person because they might be labeled a conspiracy theorist, but just understand their thought and perspective. And when things start to lead a certain way, just don't rule things out. I don't rule anything out. I don't rule out the fact that there might be a God or there might not be a God. I don't know. But I like the part that I don't know about it. I think we spend way too much time trying to understand what the answer or what the key is to everything. And we're looking for the answers to progress to the next question or next problem. We can't even focus on the one that we got right in the first place. It's pretty fucked when we're in a society where one small brick can fuck it all up. And that's what everything has done. Every single issue is a fucking small brick that just shatters our whole entire glass society instead of being made of fucking stone like our fucking houses used to be.
Absolutely, man. And the whole internet, like I know it's tropey use the term Black Mirror now, but I will always use it. It's a great and apt metaphor, and a show worthy of comparisons being made. But I mean, for real, it's good Lord, someone is storming through my house, man. I don't know if you can hear that in the background. If you can, I apologize. Um, but the projection process with the internet, it's definitely given people way more. So, like on the face of it, it seems like access at our fingertips. It is access at our fingertips of all this potential, but the underbelly of that is it's also like an unfettered, unfiltered, unwanted, really, because we were unprepared for it. I guess the biggest word there. It's this projection process that and capability that we're entirely unprepared for. Not only has it given us more, access to information, but it's given us more access to the things that we were unaware of about ourselves and other people. In ways that really challenge our like sociological norms and even our like adaptation mechanisms, because if you think about the way that the internet and social media has ramped up and like accelerated communication and like the steps that people go through to build rapport with each other, things used to be a lot more elongated time wise, and there also used to be more data, with body language and these things, and people are having to like jump through all these new hoops that we've never jumped through before. And there's I think we're in the process of building up more of an immunity, and I think it's slowly happening, the immunity being built, but it's definitely slow going, and it's been like painfully slow. And I think one of those like hoops that people are jumping through, that people are going to be real foolish about in the long run, is the whole idea of like, well, I know the truth, so I need to start telling people, like I need to get on Facebook and Twitter, and I need to wake up the masses. Like I know this truth now, and if I sit with this, like, because on the face of it, it is genuine and it seems altruistic, because I get it. I mean, even when I was younger, you know, I dabbled with a shade of this. This is like years and years ago. And it's weird to see soccer moms and everybody else go through it now. I'm like, you people, like, this is not a good look to have, because it looks like, or to you it looks like, well, I don't want to keep this information to myself, because if it's true, then I need to who am I to keep it? But let's just be real. Like, most people don't want to hear it's that old idea of like, don't talk politics and religion in unless it's like the right time and place, because a lot of times as soon as you start talking about that, the very nature of those things, kind of like, unless you approach it properly, puts you immediately on a pedestal above other people. And that's the whole thing here. These are like, we're talking about condensing social experience and things. And so people, with all these things condensed, and people coming into new social situations that they've never been a part of, like these conspiracy theories and stuff, I think we're seeing people make huge, embarrassingly bad um like steps in zealotry. And again, proselytization, people thinking like, people getting so overwhelmed by their worldview changing, that they think like the only way to justify on some level like their change is to go out and just fucking force feed. Like, it doesn't matter how many people come to you, and then if people come to you, I've seen this happen so many times, man, already. People will come to you, friends, family, um and they'll be like, "Man, why are you talking about this so much? Like, it doesn't even matter if you're right, just chill out, because it's other people just want to talk about normal stuff with you." Um and I never really got these this at me, but I mean, to be perfectly honest, I've had to give this to other people, and like, It's really not a judgmental thing. I've seen other people give it to other people. There's a whole Reddit uh, about it's like a support group for people who are family members of QAnon believers, and it's this support group of people who are like, I don't know what to do. I'm not trying to be an asshole. I don't want to like demoralize them. I just see that like regardless, I don't think they're right, but regardless of even if they are right, their relationship to these ideas and this zealotry is ruining them psychologically. That is the part that's demoralizing them. And yeah, people on their on their whole path to wake up the sheeple are really wearing their hearts on their sleeve and coming across like way more off kilter than they really think. And it's just a bad look. And it's not just conspiracy theorists. The way I see it, like the people who are, I'm not anti-vax at all, but I'm also not quote unquote pro-vax either. Like I think it's perfectly reasonable, especially if you're taking other
Well, you can't be
precautions,
that. You
to
can't be
remain
that.
skeptical.
You can't be on that. You got to pick a fucking side. That's what the thing is. It's like when you're if you don't have the vaccine, you're anti-vax, or
I
if you
think it's
have the
okay
vaccine,
to
you're
stay
pro-vax.
skeptical though.
I'm just saying it's not a fucking cure. But I guess you can't say that, or
Right.
they'll ban you off the censors, or they'll do whatever they possibly can to make sure that information doesn't get out there. I mean, this is all common shit that's on their website that you can look up and find. But I think everyone has this idea based on the narrative that the stories and the news want you to do all these types of things. Now, it's like climate change. At this point, people stopped giving a fuck about climate change because they kept telling you the world was going to end next year, and it never fucking did. And that's the thing is that when you make it so drastic to make people act, because people only act when it's red line, you've now cried wolf so many times that people don't want to believe a single fucking thing that you say. And I think the best thing to help, which I just see this QAnon or whatever these types of people that believe in these realities where they're too scared to move or they're too angry to even talk to people, is only going to keep
Right.
getting worse. And I think that's
Yeah.
just the start of separation where it just makes it easier for things to happen without us giving a fuck about. And I look at it like the only answer or fix to that is by just communicating. If you talk to these QAnon people and you have an open discussion and understand their thoughts and perspectives and then help them question or talk or all these types of things, they express themselves to where they're not angry and they're not so outbursting, screaming at somebody's face like these Karens that we see on fucking social media that are just screaming at people to put a fucking mask on. These are people that don't talk about these things and that
Right.
are
See,
scared.
that's the opposite of like a real, there's people going on like to crazy QAnon extremes. And then again, just to be fair and pick on both sides, like the Karens cry screaming at people for not wearing masks. I look at you as just as psychotically zealous and trying to
Just tell
like,
them. Just say, "What's my middle
yeah.
name?" And I'll do exactly what you say. Just tell me what my goddamn middle name is.
Yeah, yeah, for real, for real. Collective like average Joe America completely lost their minds with the whole Epstein thing, and understandably, really, because I mean that's what opened up this whole can of worms with people being interested in QAnon. Because the one thing you touched on it earlier, the one thing that you can't knock about that whole realm of I guess it's technically alt right conspiracy is I mean sex blackmail in politics, especially even American politics, definitely a thing, definitely in use, has been in use for a long time, still in use. And if nothing else, that is definitely what Epstein showed us, and that all of this political sex blackmail is definitely tied to Hollywood, at least in one form or another. And um,
Well,
yeah,
in the government,
people
you
people
fail
could not
up.
handle that.
In the
What?
government, you fail up. If you do something bad and you take the blame for it, you actually fail up and get promoted into the government
Right.
because now you're seen as now they got blackmail on top of you, and also you're willing to put your life on the line. It's kind of like with WikiLeaks with Edward Snowden. He just didn't have anything to lose, which is why he published all this type of stuff where it exposed the government, which led into like the social dilemma and all these documentaries that come out that people are now like, yeah, I know that now. It's like, yeah, but before you would have said that was a conspiracy. There, same thing with UFOs. The guy from Skinwalker Ranch said it best. He goes, if you have this information, you're afraid to get it out because it might ruin your life, then give it to someone who has nothing to fucking lose. There's,
Yeah.
and sadly, people don't think about these types of things. People don't try and look at the full answers to stuff because then maybe that person gets the credit and then they get their name published in journals and books and that person loses all. Maybe they were the one that found it in the first place, but now they don't get credit for it. You enter this weird thing where you start to see that the selfishness of people might not be an inherent factor. It might be something that's being produced. And I think the more selfish that we become as people, you start to see the evolution of, and really the evolution being the downgrade of society, which is the fact that communication stops happening. People are too afraid that if they share information or they share a thought or if they share something like that, someone will take it from them and claim it as their own. And I think that's where we lead into where we're kind of going with today. I mean, this Epstein shit is nothing. I mean, it changed a lot of people's mind, but for some people like myself knew this shit was already fucking happening, but then they get
Hmm.
labeled as something and then the information comes out and the people never want to admit they're wrong. They just gloss over it. I've seen this lab thing published on article sites where I've seen people say it's a conspiracy theory. They'll tweet other things on that site, but they'll avoid this one. And I'm like, when are you going to fucking tweet about this? When are you going to talk
Yeah.
about this? Or are you just going to keep ignoring it because you don't want to admit that you were fucking wrong? You don't even want to mention that it's even there.
Right. Yeah. If you the plausible deniability in that case, and you can try and maintain some semblance of journalistic integrity, but it's not going to work to anyone that's paying attention. Um, but unfortunately, there's not enough people really paying attention, and so a lot of that sidestepping and plausible deniability, just in terms of like, well, yeah, we did know about it, but we were covering other things, and that kind of bullshit. Yeah, that'll work on too many people, unfortunately. So I guess if you're trying to be skeevy with your journalistic um, output, then that's a good tactic. I mean, there's journalism is not dead, but journalism as we know it is dead. Um,
We're all
the
fucking
standard
sheep.
boilerplate.
We're
Yeah,
all sheep waiting
we're
for
all
the great
sheep. Even the
farm. That's it.
yeah, yeah.
I think we're all a sheep to something. We're all a slave to something. There's different definitions of what a slave is, sure. There's different terms and societal functions for it, sure. But we're all addicted to something. We're all. It's always the same concept. The information that you have that might be 100% this way, you end up finding out something later. I just like playing the long game, waiting for all the shit to fucking come out. I don't fuck. I'll say something, but I'm not adhered or stern in my stance of things. I like to understand more and more and more. And I think that comes from knowing that you're not going to know every goddamn thing out there. People want to feel
Right.
intellectual in a conversation. They'll throw in a bunch of large words. You'll see that a lot with the UFO community. And you'll see that a lot with just
Yeah.
people that want to seem like they know everything. But then once you really get past that onto the basic empty words that they use, you start to realize that either the person's scared or they don't really know the full effect of what they're even saying. I mean, there are times I'll use a bunch of large words in a conversation, sure. But I mean, I could simply put it as I don't fucking know. And I'm not stern in my stance of saying I know everything. I don't know everything. And I think the best part about life is the fact that you will never know a goddamn thing close to everything.
Yeah, I mean, people have a pessimistic view of that. Like, oh, I'm not going to know everything, and that concerns them. But in a way, I mean, the pressure's off, right? Um, don't take life too seriously. And same thing with like meaning. Like, once you get past the boring pleasantries of philosophy, and you realize some of the deeper nuances, like the meaning is it's not a question of what is the meaning of life, it's how do you put the meaning into life, and that scares people. And well, it shouldn't, because that's a lot of opportunity there. You're looking at this all wrong, and um yeah, you really got to change your mindset on that. I mean, a blank canvas shouldn't give you anxiety. That should be ultimate freedom.
That's a good thing to end on. I noticed your headphones died when you pulled your headphone out of your head.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They just died, and I got a crazy amount. I'm hoping it's not coming up in the background, but I got a crazy amount of noise coming from
I'm not
the other
hearing it,
parts of
but
my house. Okay, cool,
we
cool.
can
I was a
wrap
little paranoid.
we can wrap it though, man. Where can people find the dive manual and also the hunt manual as well too? The new addition to the Anthony Tyler series of books, not including the
Yeah,
lost works of a novel that he wrote when he was 17 years old.
yeah. I mean, if you want to go find it, there might still be some print copies you could find. It's Within This Mortal Coil by Anthony T. Pate. So that's my real last name. I don't hide my last name.
Oh, you
I just
slipped it
pulled out a
by me.
pen.
People are supposed to use their real names on my show.
Oh, really? No kidding.
Yeah. So you don't
Oh,
say a bunch of crazy shit you don't believe in, but I think you've been honest about a lot of the stuff you say.
yeah. Well, I'm super transparent. I mean, like you could find out my last name pretty easily. I just wanted a pen name, honestly, and so I dropped my last name. But anyway, that's not what I was talking about. So, but that book is, yeah, within this immortal coil. I technically got it published. Robbie and I were talking about it before we started hitting record. So, but I was also telling him that's like the prequel to all this stuff, to my writing career.
The
So, uh,
pre-Shakespeare.
yeah, I'm not embarrassed at all, but I don't really count it or anything. It was just a warm up. But you could go for
It
the
was
current
just the
action.
tip. Just the tip. I don't count it. It was just the tip.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, divemind.net, where you can find all my chats and some excerpts of my book and stuff. You can find the link to purchase Dive Manual. Um, Hunt Manual will be coming out by the new year. It might come out around Halloween. I can be flexible with the release date since it's a self release. So we'll see about that. But it'll definitely be out by the new year at the very latest, because it's definitely round in home plate and I'm super excited about it. So, yeah. You can find me on Facebook or Twitter. If you want to start a dialogue, I'm pretty open. And yeah, support me if you like any stuff I'm doing, and I appreciate you listening. And definitely thanks for having me on, Robbie. We'll be doing this again for sure. Count on it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Out of the Blank. And if there's two takeaways you can take away, which is question everything and Hillary Clinton is a reptile.